Hello everybody, welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Jose.
I'm Mike.
This is our second podcast on Star Wars.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
More spoilers this time. We're going to keep on talking about the film
It's all spoilers.
in detail.
If you haven't watched it, don't listen.
Yeah.
So we decided to have another podcast because Mike has had a change in conscience, a change of views.
I suppose you could say that. I don't know if I was in
a change of heart.
not a change exactly, because I'm sure if you listen to the last podcast, I wasn't totally negative, but I did feel within like a day I felt like I hadn't really given it the kind of fair look, really, or just my opinion was starting to change about it on reflection. Well, it's kind of in reflection to the last film, right? The episode 7. I think my brother told me something that he'd read when they were making episode 7. It was directed by J.J. Abrams. That J.J. Abrams had this kind of mantra that he would repeat on set when they were making it, which was, "Is this delightful?" Apparently, this is something that he would ask, and to keep the crew kind of in the right headspace and motivated and all the rest of it. And that comes through when you watch episode 7, because in the moment everything is fun about that film. And then it doesn't last.
It's not Lubitsch.
No, but the point is, it's like it's there to basically make you happy in the moment all the time. But you watch it a second time, or you think about it in reflection. You go, I don't really know what I saw in this. Whereas The Last Jedi it's not doing that the first time. It was kind of more challenging, and I came out of it slightly nonplussed and lukewarm. But on reflection, I'm thinking, actually, no, this is really good. There's actually something special about this.
Okay, so what is special about it?
I think, for one thing, I like the structure. The structure's different. It feels like a chamber play almost. Like Star Wars has always been about flying off to different planets and seeing new things. They're real adventure movies, you know. Whereas this is the central structure of the film is a very, very slow chase between the resistance ships trying to escape and the fleet of the First Order behind them, and they're just keeping them at arm's length, which is, you haven't really seen a chase like that in Star Wars before. You've seen chases, and you've seen dogfights and things. I think I said this in the last podcast, but you don't really see them at arm's length at this war of attrition, just waiting for them to run out of fuel and die. And it's like, it's got a kind of Dunkirk feel. Like it's just this central set piece that is about, it's not about winning, it's about surviving it, which is quite interesting. And you really get the feel in this of the resistance is properly on its last legs. Like they're losing ships hand over fist, and they're losing people.
I think that's interesting what you say about it being a chamber piece, because I do think in a way it's a chamber piece. It revolves around a few set of characters. Though, it's what happens to those characters that for me is the significant thing, kind of, the changes that you trace through all of them. So, on the one hand, it's the inner struggle in, what's the Last Jedi's name? Or Ren?
Ren. Sorry, Rey.
Rey.
The Last Jedi.
It's a struggle to find purpose, right? Which is the same thing with Luke Skywalker, which is, a struggle to find renewed purpose, which is kind of, the same thing in the John Boyega character, right? Kind of, discovery of what the struggle is about, right? So actually you kind of see, but the central character is the young girl, right? It's Ren. So Rey, she's so forgettable. That's part of the problem, really.
I do still find that a problem in this film. I still just don't like what.
I actually think that what was confirmed. There were several things that stood out for me in the second viewing. The first was how important it was to watch it on IMAX, because it really felt a diminished experience. The luminosity in this film, in this projection, was terrible. Right, like kind of, there were bits of the screen were dark where they had not been dark in the previous screening that we saw it.
Yeah, we saw this in 2D, just regular 2D screening.
Yeah,
as opposed to 3D IMAX.
It really was a diminished experience. The other thing was a confirmation of how inadequate Mark Hamill is in this part. I suppose as Luke's, you can say he's inadequate as Luke Skywalker because he invented him. But he's inadequate to the demands of the Luke Skywalker he's being asked to depict in this film. To me, he's like a blank on screen, really. And the other problem is that the other central character, the young girl, the young Jedi, is not as dynamic or as charismatic or as dimensional as I would have liked, and I think it's the actor's fault. It's not the role as written.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't agree with you on Mark Hamill. I must say I think he is up to the demands of the role. I think he portrays this broken, kind of hopeless man quite well. There are scenes like the scene he has with Yoda where he realizes that Yoda still has things to teach him, or when he interacts with R2 on the Falcon and R2 shows him the clip of Leia way back from the first film, and he feels something. There's a moment in that scene actually where he says, "Oh, that was a cheap shot or cheap trick," but then the clip goes on and she says, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." And it's right at that moment his shoulders drop, like something changes in him. It's not even that subtle, really. It's quite noticeable. It's this physical change in him that stirred me.
Wow.
Well,
I think there were some things that he did that were successful, but I think it's clearly due to the direction. So, that bit when he's fighting Kylo Ren and it all ends and he brushes his shoulder and there's a big laugh, right? But I think that's different than, what he's meant to be embodying. He's meant to be like this heroic, tragic figure, and I just don't see him that way. I just see a not very attractive, old guy kind of being mechanically correct in a way. Yeah, like he's not terrible, but kind of not conveying enough.
There is something. So when he brushes off his shoulder after having been attacked with all his guns, and just because he's not actually there, so they don't touch him. Here's the thing, right? Luke is cool in this film in a way that I don't think he ever was in the previous ones.
I don't think he's cool. I think that gesture is cool and funny.
There's a kind of.
I don't think he himself is.
Well, but he's being constructed in this way that's kind of you wouldn't expect. So, the first thing you see of him is a repeat of that shot from the end of the previous film where Rey offers him the lightsaber, and you go, "Oh, he's back! Luke is back!" And then what does he do with the lightsaber? Just tosses it over his shoulder, walks off. So he disrupts your image of him straight away.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good writing.
Yeah, it's good writing. But he's been constructed as a kind of a cool figure. Like he has an inner turmoil when no one else is around, or just when Yoda's there. But then when he comes back to help the Resistance, he's playing the part, right? Like the Resistance expects something of him. They expect that Luke Skywalker is the hero that we know. And when he comes back, although he still looks old and he's got the beard, and he's kind of he's still a hermit. He's doing it to restore hope, and he needs to be what they believe him to be. And so he plays up. He winks at C-3PO, right? And it's a kind of, and I think that's partially a fixing of the last one when Han dies and Leia ignored Chewbacca. It's like they're old friends; they should have hugged, right? But I think it's an element of that. Like he makes sure to say hello to C-3PO in this, so that the fans don't get annoyed. But like he's very consciously being the Luke that they all believe him to be.
Well, but you're talking about the character. Now, in a way, I don't have any qualms about that. I think the character is very well written. What I have a problem with is Mark Hamill, acting this part. I think his face is immobile. It doesn't convey anything. It's just, it's an elderly face that doesn't move very much and that you never feel like fully engaged with. And then, he doesn't have a heroic body, right? So, I noticed that in his fights with the Adam Driver character, they're really spaced apart, because otherwise kind of like the difference in kind of physique and height and so on would be like laughable. So, they're kept as far apart as possible.
I think that's uncharitable. I think you notice it. I think that's part of it. Like despite his physical stature and despite the way he looks now, he is still the Resistance hero he can be. I think that's what's good about him. He doesn't have to come back and be big and strong and massive, and kind of physically imposing.
I think he's a blank in the middle of this whole film, and I think he's a major problem with it. I do understand, that I'm in the minority in thinking this.
I have no idea what other people think. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah,
clearly we do.
We do,
but because I do see what you mean. I do. But I think that the film is actually kind of building a Luke around Mark Hamill's limitations rather than one that he can't portray due to them.
I think in a cast like this, that is just so great and so attractive, and when you think of the things that, Benicio del Toro brings to his part, or Adam Driver, or indeed Carrie Fisher, or Laura Dern, all of whom are so memorable, then you look at, who is meant to be, like, the center of this film in a way, right? Like, he and the young girl and the Adam Driver character are meant to be like a triangle, I think. And, when two of those poles in the triangle are, like, so weak, it creates a vacuum.
I take your point. I do agree on the part of Ray, for the most part. But, I do disagree with Mark Hamill. What can I say? I bought him.
Yeah.
At no point do I really not believe him. Like, there are certain lines that Ray has. There's some line particularly where she says, Kylo Ren is strong with the Force and blah, blah, blah. And it's like she's reading it off. She's like she's got the script in her hands and she's reading it for the first time. It's awful. It's actually embarrassing how badly that line is read. Mark Hamill doesn't have anything that bad.
Let's shift, to better things, right? Because
we've done Luke to death.
Yeah, and also I think it's kind of emphasizing the negative. So
here's something that I realised watching it just now, which I think I've always kind of known about Star Wars, but never realised until right now, which is that Star Wars has always felt different to other sci-fi to me. I remember the last time we particularly spoke about Star Trek and Star Wars and how you can't have them feel the same. And I realise now why that is, which is that Star Wars is kind of a period drama. It's like a costume drama period piece, whereas other sci-fi it really feels set in the future and about kind of gadgetry and smoothness and technology. Certainly Star Trek.
It's funny you should mention that because the John Boyega character, like, there is a whole strand of the film that deals with him, right? And basically he is a number, right? He is one of those faceless warriors. What do you call them?
Stormtroopers.
He's a stormtrooper, right? And he escapes. And actually, at the end, I thought, this is like the Dothraki in Game of Thrones, right? This is kind of like, the liberation of these, people who've been trained not to think, not to feel, and they're a number just to fight, right? And so kind of there's this whole new form of slavery that's being depicted that, basically you're just a cog, a nameless, faceless cog in this machine. And it has connotations to slavery. I think there was a very telling moment in his last fight where, he rips the captain or whatever, the evil, captain, and the mask rips. And actually you feel that it rips only to show you that it's a white person underneath.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting because it really...
I think it rips to show you it's a human underneath as well.
Well,
it's a human, obviously.
I knew it was a human, but actually,
But there is something about seeing her eye looking back at him is different to just seeing a big shiny silver helmet.
Okay, but you could have done that in various ways, right? Like, they show you the skin, and it's clearly like a white person. Anyway, that's what it made me think of.
Yeah.
Right, and for for very good reasons, because there is a whole theme of a kind of slavery, right, that runs through it. But just to go back to your point that it has like these connotations of a costume drama or whatever, it reminded me of the Dothraki in Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I connected that bit of the film to.
I must watch Game of Thrones.
Yes, you must. So I see what you're talking about.
I think there are also things about. I think sci-fi is very often concerned with ideas of the future and what humans could become, and not always, obviously, but Star Wars the Jedi are a religion, and it has this kind of everyone's dressed in these robes and tunics, And despite the fact that they have kind of new technology around them all the time, they're using swords.
It has a medieval...
Right,
yeah.
and also the idea of that central family, this bloodline, that kind of connotes, sort of, as you say, kind of medieval, kind of royal kingdoms, that sort of thing. It has this kind of ancient feel. I mean, it's set, a long time ago, isn't it?
A galaxy far away. Listen,
but I think that kind of adds to it. Like it's concerned with itself as almost like a fable, or like a mythological story.
Yes. Well, I think part of the power of the series is that it definitely connects with myth, and it does so very powerfully, and that's why people feel so strongly about it. Really, so I think that's undoubted. And I think that the developments in all of that for me are really praiseworthy. So I mean, the second viewing confirmed my first impression, which was that unusually in the series, this film really focuses on the women, right? It's the women who do and who are leaders and who are in positions of power and who enact heroic things. One of the characters that most impressed me in this and that I loved, she's very bubbly and bright and she livens up every scene she's in, is
Rose.
Yeah, I love her, right? And she gets given, in a way, the theme of the film, right? Kind of, it's the struggle is to save what you love, not to, what is it?
Destroy what you hate.
Destroy what you hate,
yeah.
Right? That's kind of like, the theme of the film, and it's given to her to voice. Right, so I love that it's multiracial, right, and also I love that aspect of the medieval myth, which is all like inheritance and blood and whatever, is kind of destroyed through the character of Rey, right? Because this emphasis that really she's nobody and she comes from nowhere, and her parents have just sold her. So kind of everybody has a role in the struggle, and everybody can be a Jedi Knight, and it's not just because of who your parents were.
Well, that's something I like more the second time. Although not everyone can become a Jedi Knight, you do still have to feel the Force. But
yes,
but obviously, I mean, if you look at the previous films, when there were lots of Jedi, they weren't all part of the same family, right? Lots of different people feel the Force,
yes,
and were part of the Jedi Order. It's perfectly sensible that someone else who is Force capable, just shows up and becomes connected to the story.
I think that has resonances with our culture. So, for example, if you get a good education, you get the benefits of a good education. But you could be a mathematical genius and be poor, and if you get an education, it's not due to you being rich. So I think the way that the Force is distributed.
She's like Ramanujan.
Sorry,
Srinivasa Ramanujan.
No,
he was a bloke from India in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Who was a maths genius, but he was in the middle of India, no real kind of education around him, and then Hardy sort of discovered him or was pointed in his direction and brought him to Cambridge, and he became this kind of great genius. Although I think there were things like from like one textbook that he had in India, he kind of invented calculus and Pythagoras and things just on his own.
Wow.
With that kind of thing. So that's what Rey is.
That's right. To connect it back to the film. So I love that, and actually it the second viewing really confirmed that those are, kind of themes that are worked through and woven through the film as a whole. They're deliberate and systematic and patterned, right? So I love that.
I like it more the second time. The first time that I thought, I don't know what I thought. Actually, no. I remember that I said the first time was. It made sense to me that Rey comes from nowhere because she's not interesting enough to be part of the family or something like that, which is kind of a bit harsh.
Cheap shot.
Yeah, it's a cheap shot. But no, you're right. Like on reflection, and watching it the second time, it is good. Like there is no particular reason, or it would be almost too much of a coincidence for her to somehow be related. It makes a lot more sense, and it's more plausible that she's really just nobody. And then, as you say, kind of what that connotes with her lack of a background and the fact that she can just be someone else who forms part of this fight without having to be particularly important to anyone else for any other reason. It's something that I think is great, and actually it's something that the films have missed. that everything in the films has been about the story of Anakin and Luke and their history over the first 6 films.
There were a few technical things that impressed me more. Well, not that they impressed me more the second time around, but I didn't even notice them the second time around, really. And one is the use of sound in the film, which I think is terrific, right? There are entire scenes like, the initial conversation with...
Ray and Ren?
Yeah.
You're talking about when the sound drops out?
Yeah. And, the sound drops out, or it's like a Dolby thing where... to indicate the possibility that he may or may not be in the same room, you're hearing the sound come from different directions.
Right, yes.
And then there's that moment of explosion where the sound just goes off, right?
The kamikaze.
Yes.
Thing, the sound. Yeah, that's I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's
so kind of when you pay attention to the way that the sound is kind of structured and made expressive and. In the film, it's actually really beautifully done, I think, and I hadn't noticed it the first time.
Yeah, and the way that John Williams works, the way that the leitmotifs are brought back in. There are some of the most recognisable tunes, melodies in cinema. Are, kind of Leia's theme and the Star Wars theme and Luke's theme, and when they come back in, you recognise them and they bring back all those feelings that you're supposed to feel, and they are kind of rewritten and rearranged, and they kind of come back in ways that if they feel so natural. There are kind of plot things that I had a problem with the first time that I still have a problem with, which is mostly set on the Resistance ship, the Resistance cruiser. All the stuff with Laura Dern's character and Poe. What is Laura Dern's character's name? Hobley or something. Tina Hobley.
I don't know. I just know she was fantastic.
So the film starts off with Poe attacking this dreadnought. He kind of sneaks his way through their defences so he can take out all the surface cannons, which is great. And Leia's saying, "Pull back." I can't, but I'm not entirely sure why she was. She was saying, "Pull back," and eventually he gets rid of the last cannon. And then she says, "Pull back, we've got to retreat." And I don't know why that was, because that was when they could bring in the bombers. And then he gets it in the neck, because they end up doing this bombing run. They lose a bunch of ships. They lose a bunch of Resistance people. And he gets it in the neck saying, "You were reckless." But I thought, actually, watching the second time, I thought, Leia can still say, "Don't bring in the bombers." Like, she's still in charge. Why is he getting the blame? I don't like that. And then that goes on to have... There are all these politics that go on the ship with... Leia nearly dies and she's in recovery, and so Laura Dern takes command, and then she kind of... Sometimes she seems to have a plan and sometimes she doesn't, and I don't think it's the film controlling it. I think the film actually loses control of its plot at this point, because I think you're unsure as to... I still think that she needs to do more to get Poe under control if he's threatening what's going on. She's not planning this far ahead. When she decides to turn the ship round to suicide attack Snoke's ship, she does that on the spur of the moment because she was expecting the escape pods to get away.
Yes.
Yeah. So the First Order are told about the escape pods by Benicio del Toro's character, and that's why they start attacking them. And that's when she decides, "I've got to do something about this." And the only thing I can do left is ram the ship. So she's not planning any of this. Well,
I think what she did plan was the escape, the emptying of the ship.
Yeah, she did. But why not? I still think she needs to tell people about that. I think it is very muddled as to whether she has a plan or not, and I think that is the film needing people to do unwise things or implausible things in order for the plot to work.
I think that's also part of the film's theme, because one of the themes of the film is that you have all these boys leaping to action, right, and you have all these women with a plan.
Kind of. I kind of see that. I think that's what the film is aiming at. Well, it's certainly aiming at that. I mean, Poe is impulsive and wants to get involved in the fight and says, "We can do this, we can do that." And obviously Laura Dern is not doing that. She's doing the opposite. She's kind of remaining kind of steadfast. But the fact that she kind of keeps things from him in ways that encourage him to behave recklessly.
I don't know. I feel, it's understandable. It's meant to be a military operation, and he's a nobody. So actually, if you would think of this as a war film...
I don't think he is a nobody. I mean, he's their best pilot, and he's the one who, when all the command have been killed in that attack on the bridge, the film is showing you he is...
side of the point.
The film
he's not an admiral or a general
but no one is. No one is. The point is they're all lost apart from Leia. That's what they say, is that everyone in command apart from Leia was lost in that attack on the bridge, and Leia is indisposed. And so when they announce that who's going to be the acting captain, the film is presenting him as, I'm going to be the one, and then it's undercut when it turns out actually they're giving it to Laura Dern.
Yes.
So he's not nobody. He seems to be on more or less the same level as she is.
Well, that was not my feeling at all.
Until obviously she becomes captain.
I mean, he was a colonel and he got demoted to captain. You know,
True.
So kind of to me that was all. The film made that clear to me. I didn't have a problem with it.
In this, once the kind of ranks are kind of reconfigured, but until then, like I say, it's that's that scene where she's given command of the ship is about undercutting him because he assumes it's going to be him and he gets ready to stand up and take command.
Yes.
You know?
Well, but
I'm not saying he's not arrogant.
It's a way of putting that kind of, impulsive masculine kind of impetus to just make things explode and dampening it down.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, I thought that was good.
I agree with the point behind it, but I think that actually the mechanics of what goes on are very muddled.
Okay, I didn't feel that. Actually, one of the things that I admired about the film was how clear the storytelling was throughout, how to me it made sense at every instance, and also how it was kind of rhythmically put together, right? So that, there were shifts in tone, there were moments that were exciting, moments that were moving, kind of, they always brought in humor interspersed throughout all of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of like, the architecture of the film was very well thought through.
It is for the most part. And actually, I think I complained the first time around that it was too long, which I take back. And actually, I think it's one of these things that when I hate spoilers, right? But I think there is often an advantage to knowing what's going to happen in a film because it feels tighter and shorter, particularly what happens on the casino planet in this.
I love that even more.
I felt it was very baggy the first time round, and in this, actually, I realise it's only 3 scenes maybe, and they're quite short. But I think it's when you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know how long it'll last, and you're kind of anticipating. Well, you don't know what you're anticipating. When you know it's going to be over in a few short scenes, it feels that much tighter.
Yes, I mean
there is an advantage to watching it a second time.
They do so much with it, and actually, I feel it's quite a radical moment in the film, right? Because it's a real kill the rich moment.
Yeah.
Right. So these are all arm dealers, kind of spending masses of money, gambling, masses of money that they've basically earned is the wrong word, that they've manufactured through indiscriminate arms dealing, which means they're selling to anybody for money, responsible for massive destruction, and using the gains of that massive destruction, here for evanescent pleasure. So, kind of, it is a real kill the rich moment. Yeah. And I thought it was exhilarating.
I like also the kind of implication or the kind of undercurrent it gives you of this war economy going on in the galaxy, because up until now, everything has been, you don't really question where people get their technology from. Like the rebels have ships, and the Empire's had ships, and the First Order's had ships, and the Rebellion has ships, Resistance has ships. So, and you just kind of buy it, like this is Star Wars, right? Everyone's got ships. But the idea of actually, like, your ship's got to come from somewhere, and people are making money off this, and there is this amoral kind of bedrock beneath it.
Yes,
is very
which is shown through the children and the horses, right? So the people who are maintaining kind of this luxury gambling outpost are actually, the children that are basically child labor, and these horses that you think you're not sure whether they're horses or whether they're a different species, right? And part of the plot is to liberate them.
Well, they are different species. I think she calls them faras or something. I just call them horse dogs.
Okay, well, but I like intelligent beings, with feelings,
absolutely.
right? So the whole thing is run on slavery. So, the whole thing I think is like fantastic, right? It is like a kind of a radical moment, if that's what it's saying, really.
What about something I mentioned to you in the movie? What about this idea that Hux is constructed in a kind of gay way, or as gay? Like, so it first really occurred to me when he slaps Finn. Finn and Rose have come onto the ship onto Snoke's ship to infiltrate and try and destroy this tracker thing. They're caught, and when they're presented to him, he slaps him with the back of his hand, and that's.
If we were talking at a different moment, I would say absolutely.
Okay.
That's the way that he's being coded. But if you take on board all of this, like, non-binary, differently gendered, blah, blah, then actually it is quite possible that, he's a very effeminate but maybe rampantly heterosexual person, right?
I suppose, but the film is still using a certain language to communicate. I don't think. Well, put it another way, it's not unusual throughout cinema history to have seen villainous characters portrayed in such a way.
The shortcuts of making people seem weak or indecisive is to kind of code them in ways that connote homosexuality anyway. So
do you think that's something then that I'm reading into it rather than that it's actually being presented?
No, I think it's being presented, and I think you are meant to maybe read one thing for the other, So actually, I think the attempt or the overall intent is to communicate weakness and indecisiveness and kind of a bit of ass licking and subservience and so on.
That's certainly true. Well, I think I'm not sure in indecision. I think he is decisive, but he's undercut by his superiors all the time, and he's also undercut by people below him. I think actually he gets it in the neck from everybody. I mean, the film starts off with Poe taking the piss out of him when he's stalling for time so he can charge up his thing. He says, I want to talk to General Hux, and then Hux threatens him with this elaborate thing of "we will crush your rebellion," and then he says, I'm waiting for Hux, which could be seen as kind of inappropriate humour, not inappropriate, but sort of unexpected. You're expecting a more dramatic moment, but then like throughout the film, Hux is being treated in that way. There's that point where Ren just force pushes him like into the wall. And then the guy sitting at the desk goes, "Right away, sir." And that kind of like, this guy means nothing. This guy is not as big as he thinks he is. Or I think, which I kind of like. Like, it doesn't undercut the entire First Order. The entire First Order is still this massive Nazi machine. But that there is one person at the kind of apex of it who is not really all that powerful and is actually a figure of fun that you can mock. I quite like.
And a figure to be manipulated.
The film doesn't have respect for the First Order. Like, I think in a weird way actually the films kind of did respect the Empire back in the original trilogy. It presented this huge empire and there was nothing really wrong with it. It had hubris, I guess, but it wasn't a figure. It wasn't. You couldn't mock it. Whereas you mock Hux.
Yes. No, I agree. And I do see that. I think the second time I saw it, what was reinforced for me also was how touching Carrie Fisher is in the role. Right? Like, kind of, I think there were moments just kind of looking at her hands and the way that she spoke, and obviously the last speech to Luke Skywalker, right, where it was, "I know,"
I changed my hair.
I thought it was very touching.
Yes. I agree.
So, they've really given her a fantastic send-off. And actually, I think that kind of move through space after the whole thing is blown up, right?
When she pulls herself back to the ship.
Yes, I thought that was wonderful.
I've heard a lot of people actually say that they found that really disrespectful to her character.
Why?
I guess because she's kind of exposed in space.
Right.
I don't know really, but I was certainly uncomfortable with it the first time.
I heard some people say, oh, well, it's in space, you should have been destroyed instantly and whatever, and you think, oh, fuck off. I mean, this is a story about Jedi fucking knights. Like, you know, you can suspend disbelief for a few things, right? Like, you know, if Luke Skywalker can fight the Adam Driver character across another planet, you can believe that she'll survive 2 minutes in space, right? Like, it's ridiculous.
And to the best of my knowledge, you can survive sort of 30 seconds, a minute in space before you start blowing up. The human body is just about that resilient. Like, I mean, it's still shown as, you know, on the easy side for her to survive. But I know what you mean.
She's a Jedi.
Yeah, she's still Jedi, isn't she? Pretty much.
So she is.
I know. I know. But I think it's that interesting thing of sci-fi. Like, you suspend your disbelief to a certain degree, but like you get the science right up until it conflicts with the story you need to tell.
Well, actually, I wondered if there was like a sexist element to that, because, you know, I mean, it's all right for Luke Skywalker to fight a battle, you know, across space, you know, in another planet, but it's not okay for a woman to survive like 30 seconds in space and get to a ship.
I don't.
I mean, because they're meant to be twins, right? Yeah.
I don't think that's a sexist.
Well, I think they have the same power.
Yeah, I know, but but it's not been established before that being force capable can keep you alive without a spacesuit. Like, I think no, it's that's honestly. I think the film sets up certain elements to its fiction which you buy into. So the force you buy into, and the
the force is with her.
Yeah, sure, but like, it's never been established that the Force can do something like that, and I think that if that happened to Luke, people would still have the same issue. Like, you know, so that's something that I didn't know you could get away with. Okay, I don't think that's a sexist thing. I think that is an element of the film slightly taking
liberty. You may be right, but I thought, you know, I mean, really, you know, she is a Jedi Knight. It explodes, kind of. You see her fingers move, so she wakes up, and then kind of, once she finds a moment of consciousness, she navigates back towards the ship, which I thought was like, you know, not a big deal. And it also provides her with a lovely moment, like a lovely visual moment, right?
With the actual shot of her.
Yeah. You know, and particularly since it's her last film, I thought that was a wonderful moment.
Well, I think that may be one of the reasons that I found it uncomfortable the first time, because although I didn't feel like I kept the baggage of her having passed away with me, that is obviously a moment in which she is dead in the film, or near death. I mean, well, you first see her and you might as well assume that she's dead, you know, until she moves her fingers. Which I thought it's kind of like how, you know, kind of films kind of post 9/11 would take out the Twin Towers because they were aware of this momentous thing that happened. It kind of reminded me of that, the kind of way that, despite the fact it's totally fictional, it interacts with what's happened in real life. Although obviously they didn't take out her scene, but the fact that it's in there it's not informed by the fact that Carrie Fisher's passed away, but it reminds you of it.
Okay,
that's it.
So what are some other things that you found that you changed your mind, or that you found better the second time around?
Really, what it is I respect it so much more. Like, what I said at the end of the first podcast, I think is true, which is it feels authentically Star Wars in a way that the previous film didn't. The previous film felt like it was playing at Star Wars. It felt like fan fiction. It was kind of using all of these references and picking up all of these things that you knew and loved from Star Wars and putting them in. And this film doesn't do that so much. And this film actually builds something. But it's quite interesting because a lot of people have been saying pretty much the opposite, that this is not authentically Star Wars and it's doing something different. And I think that actually what it does differently is its strength, or its various strengths. When it comes up in the credits, the first credit you see as the film fades, you know, the film closes, is written and directed by Rian Johnson. Written and directed. Now that's huge, you know? The fact that, to the best of my knowledge, they gave him a blank slate. They said to Rian Johnson, you've seen the previous film, or they were in the middle of making the previous film, you've seen the script. From that story, write whatever you like. And then I'm sure that they will have had involvement, you know, after that, saying, well, we want this, we want that. But to say, you get to do what you like as a writer, not just a director, that's huge. You know, it's like, it's actually kind of an auteur's Star Wars film. and he's a real artist, Rian Johnson. He's not a hack like J.J. Abrams is. I really think that. And so you can tell like there are risks in this film. They've taken risks, or they've been bold in certain respects. Doing that with Luke, I saw this interview with Mark Hamill where he said he still hasn't accepted what they've done with Luke, because his Luke Skywalker would never give up on the rebellion, which is what he has in this. But he said, it's not my film anymore. It's not George Lucas's Star Wars anymore. It's something else. It's a second generation of Star Wars, and I will do what I'm required to do for the role. But that's interesting. Like even for Mark Hamill to say, in promoting the movie, I'm not 100% happy with this. They took risks in this film, and it shows. They paid off.
There's one thing I meant to ask you, as a non-fan, which was, and this will probably seem really stupid to people, but I just kind of didn't get it. What was the significance of the dice, or the gold?
This is something, actually, you've reminded me, thank you. I want to look up, because I don't remember the dice being in the films before. And actually let me just have a quick Google of that, because...
Yes, I have seen all the films, some many times, in fact, but I didn't get that within the film, except obviously they go from person to person, but the significance of it escaped me.
They were in A New Hope, apparently. I don't remember them.
And what do they signify?
Well, I guess they signify that it was won in the Millennium Falcon was won in a gamble, right? It was won in a bet. But I guess it reflects Han's thing of he's a gambler and he doesn't really think ahead. And I think he says in the last film, I think Rey says something like, "Is this possible to do with the Falcon?" And he says, "I never think about that before I've done it," something like that. So I think it reflects his character. But in this film, well, the fact that I didn't remember them and I thought they'd actually been brought in for this film suggests that they were never that important.
But they get past. But they are important in this film.
Yeah, but they become important in this, and I think actually the film was. It seemed to me that the film was trying to give them a level of importance that they'd never earned before, because it's like they became this symbol of Han. They became this symbol of his family, right? I think Ben's family, because I think it's they show up to Ben Solo, don't they? They end up in his hand at the end, and then they disappear because he and Rey connect via the Force one last time without Snoke's assistance this time. Suggests that they will keep doing that, which is quite exciting.
It is quite exciting. Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
So it's like he has this thing of kind of extinguishing his family. Like he kills his dad, and then in this one he kills, or thinks he kills, Luke, his uncle. He's constantly fighting kind of who he is supposed to be, or is being told that he is.
Well, he does kill him, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we're told that Luke dies.
But as Luke says, in a kind of reflection of that line that Obi-Wan had in the first film, "If you strike me down, I'll become stronger than you could possibly imagine." Luke says, "If you kill me in anger, I'll be with you forever." And you will. Like, it's not the fact that Luke is literally not there anymore. He's going to constantly be haunting.
Well, that's good, because maybe he'll only appear with his voice, which is very expressive, and not his face.
It'll be the same, but he'll have that big blue glow around him, only like Yoda did. I think he Kylo Ren is such an interesting villain. He's such an interesting character, and he's got so much, all this turmoil inside him. I love when he kills Snoke, and then they take out all of his guards, and he offers to build something together to Rey. It's not that he has feelings for her, but they've connected, right? That Snoke, in connecting them via the Force, has been trying to stoke.
He has feelings for her. There's no question he has feelings for her.
Sure, but I mean, okay, not romantic feelings is what I mean, but they've connected.
He has romantic feelings for her.
I don't think so.
Oh, no, I think he's hot for her.
I disagree. I think when he offers her his hand and says, "Forget the past, we can build something, destroy the past," it's like that he wants to get rid of his past, right? He hates where he's come from.
Listen, yes, and all of that.
But hold on, let me finish. He hates where he's come from, and he wants to kill it. And Rey represents someone who has no past, and he's a real blank slate. And so when he offers his hand to it, it's like, you understand me. We understand each other. It's not about, and let's go make whoopee.
But those two things are indistinguishable.
But
it's about, let's make a life together. We've got so much in common, blah, blah, blah. That's another way of saying he's in love. It's not all just about, sex, though that's indicated as well. He obviously finds her like really attractive in all those ways. I mean, that's a way of indicating love.
I didn't get that. Where'd you get that from?
From all that you just said. Let's build a life together. Like, we can do this. We have so much in common. Blah. That's
not about physical attraction.
That's about love.
I don't think it is about love. I honestly don't. I think it's about...
traditionally, that's love.
I think it's about loneliness. I think it's about loneliness.
Well, that's also part of love.
I think it's just finding someone who understands you is not the same as falling in love. He feels...
Well, actually, it often is. In romantic fiction, one thing stands in for another. Finding someone who understands you is finding your mate.
Possibly. But I don't think this film communicates romance.
Well, to me it does.
Okay. Well,
and actually, that's part of what makes it so strong. That kind of... There is kind of this romance, that is kind of fought through with struggle at every step. Which is, again, is another traditional trope of romance, actually. So I think
the film is too concerned with what people would think to make it into a love interest thing. Like the film is more interested. The film is more concerned about keeping Rey as independent and that sort of thing, and not having to rely on love.
No, the film brings in other things because clearly, who she's interested in is the John Boyega character, right? And so there's another triangle there between Rosie, the John Boyega character, and Rey.
Rose, Finn, and Rey.
Yes, that's one little triangle.
If you say so. I think it's clear. It's obviously there.
What do you mean if I say so?
Well, because I don't know. I don't see it. It's obviously there between Rose and Finn. Like Rose falls for Finn, and Finn doesn't see it because he's that kind of clumsy man character that is oh so fun.
There's all the exchange of looks at the end where they meet, they embrace passionately. And then he brings Rosie, and then she looks at him taking care of Rosie, right? And there's a little tension there.
I think the Finn and Rey thing would be strong if they hadn't spent an entire film on two different planets, or one planet and one spaceship. Like they're completely apart, and they hug at the end with a smile because they seeing each other and they survived, not because they're in love.
It's more than a friendship thing.
I suppose you're clearly some sort of love guru.
Yes, well, and you're so clearly blind to it. You would know love if it kind of slapped you in the face and said, "I'm here."
Well, to be fair, I mean, I haven't heard anyone else talk about that. It might be interesting to get other people's thoughts because that's not something that really occurred to me. I wasn't blind to it, but I thought it kind of occurred to me, and then I went, no, this is not about that. This is about something else.
Why can't it be about?
I'm not saying it can't be. I'm saying I don't think it is though. That's all. I mean, if they wanted to, they could definitely make it obvious, make it more obvious.
Put it there and let it bubbling away.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Anyway, a last thing. What does that...
Well, I respect it an awful lot more the second time. I like the fact... It's the fact that I didn't like it enormously the first time and then immediately was thinking about it and wanted to see it a second time I think is a good thing. I think a lot of things that you don't like at first end up being some of your favourite things.
It survived a second viewing in very undesirable circumstances because we saw a very bad print of it.
Although in some respects I did prefer seeing it in 2D to 3D. Despite the fact that the screening was a little dark, I think that seeing it in 2D shows off the compositions.
I almost always prefer seeing things in 2D. And actually this was strange because usually the 3D reduces the luminosity. So I thought, that we'd be seeing it without the 3D, but actually that it would be brighter, that there'd be more light in the image. Whereas actually it was the opposite. So we saw it without 3D, but actually with the kind of luminosity that you expect in 3D.
Yeah, well, I guess the difference was made by the fact that in 3D we also saw it in the IMAX digital, which is, kind of show-offy and expensive and everything. Whereas in this one we saw it in, I guess, a regular digital screening.
But it was a disappointment, actually. I thought... Yeah.
A little bit.
So anyway, righto.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw it twice.
Yes, so am I.